Good morning, welcome back to United TV. Lots of different stories to talk about, starting with BOUADDI. We'll also be looking at BALDE, Juve. So it looks like Manchester United are actually slowly starting to put together maybe a short list for the left back position as well. Kadioglu was talked about a few days ago. So Kadioglu, Juve, BALDE, it's actually a list of very good players. So potentially if Manchester United do go for a left back, I don't think we're going to be too disappointed with the player we might actually end up with. And BOUADDI is a player that I've been talking about on this channel probably, and going back to Red Devil United, I've probably talked about this player for at least a year, maybe slightly longer as well. So it's actually nice to talk about a player that Manchester United have been on it's been on the radar for quite a while. You'd have to go back to as a 17-year-old, his performance against Real Madrid really put him on the football map. And since then, I think there's been steady progression as well. He's a player that's going to be in demand, so it's going to be expensive. So just to quickly go through the news and where this started with BOUADDI, and I'll just say in the chat as well, welcome to people that have just tuned in as well. If you are new to the channel, it's quite a friendly community. So if you've watched BOUADDI play for Lille, then post some of the things you like about him, where you think he fit in. Maybe also, maybe also how much should Manchester United actually consider paying for BOUADDI? Because this is another player that maybe a year ago you might be getting not a bad deal, and it might start getting more expensive. When I go through the teams that are listed as interested, there could potentially be, potentially this could be quite a bidding war as well. I don't know where BOUADDI would prefer to go, but the teams interested are the best teams in Europe. So looking at this, that Lille are hoping that BOUADDI's going to be their record sale this summer. We know that they want to cash in. They've always said that they don't really want to sell a player, but they would sell a player if it brings in significant money. So we're looking at a not cheap deal. So put it that way. So just to go back to where the story started building, a couple of days ago, Paris Saint-Germain ramping up their effort to try and get BOUADDI, and they're looking at negotiating. They're looking at trying to sign the youngster in recent weeks. And actually, this is no different from the Euro situation that teams are going to be interested. And Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain, they both look throughout their own league, see what players they can pick up as well. So again, if you're going to buy a player from the French league, there's a reasonable chance that Paris Saint-Germain will be looking at trying to get him as well. And Paris Saint-Germain coming from a strong position, the team's playing very well. They're potentially going to get to another Champions League final. So there's a lot. It's a serious threat that Paris Saint-Germain pose. And also to go to the other side of this as well. And these are other teams interested. If you look at this list of teams interested, it's pretty much who's the best team in Europe right now, isn't it? Apart from, well, Manchester United also on the list from our point of view, but Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich, Arsenal, that's three of the top four teams in the Champions League this season. So it's going to be expensive. And Manchester United, we have to pay quite a lot of money if we want to get this player. I suppose it depends on that how convincing an argument are the scouts and the team that wants him at United going to be able to put forward, because there's going to be a lot of good options in the Premier League, and BOUADDI's going to be one where, yeah, maybe a year ago, like I said, it could be a cheap option, but at the moment certainly would be one of the more expensive ones. I think he's going to be pushed up in value, just because of all the interest as well. So welcome Jim and welcome Howard to the conversation. What are people's initial thoughts regarding this one? That how much money would you pay for someone like BOUADDI? I will go through what he's been doing at Lille as a bit of a scouting report as well to give you a bit of information if you're not too familiar with him. I think primarily though, he came onto the fore. Defensive work, off the ball work is forte. His tackling is fantastic, and I think we're seeing actually somebody that if you watch some videos of him and you see him play, he does glide through the pitch on the ball. If you look at Ko Menu and his dribbling in the last game against Brentford, I think you look at something similar where it looks quite effortless. He does look very comfortable, but it's something that no passing is something that he's probably working on, and that's probably not the strength of his game at the moment. But I think he's probably, if you look at some of the better midfielders on the ball in Europe at the moment, he kind of compares to those. But I'd say that the defensive work is his forte at the moment. That's where he's really good at. D Hexing is saying that it looks like the United leaks have been taken care of. Everyone has different reports from different players. There's a lot out there. I think this is representative as well. That also welcome Quinn to the chat. I think this is kind of where the information is. I think there's just a lot of players scouted, and the fact that Manchester United have there's lots of links to lots of different players. I think it just shows that United are looking quite quite wide and far with this one. There's not. if you find a football player you think is a great prospect or a great talent, then he will be on Manchester United's radar. There's literally, I think the way that scouting's done with data, it's almost like every single club is going to be looking at the same players. So if Manchester United look at a player, you can bet that Paris Saint-Germain, Real Madrid, Liverpool, Manchester City, all the other teams will have looked at this player at some point. And obviously, everyone can't sign all these players. So it's going to come down to Manchester United probably looking where they really prioritise and what sort of player they want. I would say if you're looking at Boadi, then because he's only 18, so I always want to not really classify players as certain style of players. But if you're looking at Boadi at the moment, you would say that defensively is probably his best attributes at the moment. Incredibly good at tackling, but I think composure on the ball, very good. Very young, so I don't think we're going to be seeing him being the flagship signing, walking straight to midfield. But yeah, it's for me, it's an interesting prospect, possibly because I've been talking about him for about a year. Marv says, say you're saying not another prospect. Say ready-made players. This is probably like you're looking with ready-made players. It's great, but this this player you're talking about saying a prospect, he was probably one of the best players on the pitch about 18, like probably about 2 years ago when they beat Real Madrid. So the fact that we're talking about him being very young, it's still a player that's going to be very very good at this point in time. Welcome, Isabella. Welcome, Tony, as well, saying you do trust in us with our transfer strategy, considering what they've done so far. I think what we're looking at, what we've done so far, Mops, you're saying that Brady will be like the rest of the youth. Cheeto, no, I think like Cheeto is an academy player. Leon was a South American player that was barely on the football map. I think when we're talking about Boadi, we're talking about somebody that's been playing for Lille for a couple of seasons now in the French league. The links with all top teams in Europe that Paris Saint-Germain are going to be trying to sign this player. So this is not the same as Lyon, and this is not the same as Kone. This is not an academy player. This is a player that's playing at the highest level and playing very well in the Champions League. So it's a bit more advanced, but I take what you're saying that I think United do need a balanced strategy. But if you think about it, if Manchester United are genuinely going to go for Belieber or they're going to try and sign Tchouameni or Tonali, then I think alongside that, if you're going to buy a player that's maybe 24, 25, 26, an 18-year-old player that's potentially going to be a good option in a lot of games, very good in the Champions League, already done that as well. So I think that when you see Boadi, don't be put off by his age. He's really good. And if you're looking at him, if you're looking at someone to develop, but also a ready-made prospect, just imagine having too many there and having Boadi as someone that's going to be. It's a bit like having Casemiro and Manu. There's a big age gap between these factors as well. So there's a big age gap. Alex says, finally some buys I come back. If you know about Boadi, you're kind of going to be having you're probably going to be quite positive about this one as well. Cake's saying very few players are elite level at age 18. I'd say he's definitely, I think elite gets thrown around a lot. I think he's on the map in terms of like, if I had to list players that are teenagers that you feel can actually or probably compete at the highest level in the Champions League, Wadi has proved that he can do that. Obviously, consistency will not be there yet. And obviously, there's like a lot of room to develop. I think the exciting thing is, though, that it's not that
Like a lot
it's a
of room to
finished
develop.
article because we're going to hopefully we're going to buy the finished article as a mentor. That's kind of where the transfer strategy should go in my view. That if you get an 18-year-old, but you've also got 23, 24-year-olds in the team that have maybe prove themselves over a longer time period, I think you start looking at an effective transfer strategy. So I don't mind signing, if you sign half the players that are going to be between 23, 24, 25 as like a key age where they've already got a few years of experience, they're going to come into the first team, they're going to have the peak of their career at Manchester United, they're the perfect signings. But for every signing like that, you maybe have an Aiden Heaven, you have a Yoro, you have a Dorgu, and you have someone like Bawadi possibly as a good option for a good option in the short term, but potentially world class in about 3 or 4 years' time. So I think that's what they're looking at. That Manchester United continually need to think about where the team's going to go, and fixing the first team is paramount. I agree, but also making sure that it's sustainable over the long term. If every player you sign is age 25, 26, the team's going to kind of hit the wall at the same time. All these players are going to be, you're going to have an exceptional team. It's going to be expensive, but your team will be exceptional in the short term. But you're then going to have some issues where all the players start peaking at the same age, all the players start needing to replace at the same age. It's really, really difficult. And so you'll stay still waiting for Jallo to develop. But the thing with Jallo is that he wasn't putting in the level of performance that Wadi is at age 18 and younger. And I think with Jallo also people would say that Jallo doesn't isn't going to start most games either. That you'd say when Manchester United actually get a bit more depth, and Buemo and Cunha are the starters, and Buemo, Cunha, and Sesko should be the starting front three. Bruno Fernandes definitely, and I think when you look at Dorgu, Almajalo, it's up for them to be trying to fight for positions. I think Dorgu's maybe made a better case recently, but I think this is what you need. You need to have 25, 26 year olds at your first team and above, and then have younger players fighting to come through. Like, I don't think Yoro should start every single game. I don't think Aiden Heaven should start every single game. I think they're there to try and force their way in. If Boadi comes to Manchester United, it's going to be great competition for any other player we sign to make sure they keep up to their level. But also, I think this you've got to have some players that develop as well. I think this is one where the price might be quite expensive. So, morning, Andy, the chat. So yeah, I think all players say that sort of thing, don't they? If players come out and say we're not competitive, they couldn't really say that either. So, they, Neil says I didn't know Anderson was a boyhood United fan. I've not heard that before either. So I've not heard that before. Den says you heard the price was about 60 million, and say that does sound pretty high. That is pretty high. I suppose if you look at 60 million, I suppose it's how many good seasons has Buadi had? He's 18-year old, so he's 18. So we're talking about a couple here. So it's going to be. I think the price tags are they're probably definitely too much at the moment for some players. But again, you probably end up having to pay a lot more than you want to get younger players. So to go through where where Boadi fits in and what is he good at, there's obviously a lot. He's been on the map for a while, and I think since he was 17 years of age, people have been talking about him. So I'm going to go through a few of the things that he's good at just to see where he would fit into the team. So his reputation has pretty much been built on somewhat of a midfield enforcer. Tackling is extremely good, and his passing metrics are not quite there yet, but they're definitely improving. So things that he's actually quite good at. That he's 6'1", just for people that want to know how tall he is. He's one person that, in terms of like loose balls, winning possession, 50-50s, this is something where he excels at. So if you're looking at something in terms of like what attributes go under the radar that are good in the Premier League, winning your duels, winning your battles, winning back possession, 50-50s, that's something where he actually excels at. And I think that's where he was like noticed when Lille beat Real Madrid in the Champions League. He was man of the match, and people took note. And that was when he was a 17-year-old. If you're looking at his dribbling, you could also say that he's very, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. Despite being quite large, he's actually pretty agile. He's able to protect possession. He's able to draw pressure and not panic. So very composed. A little bit mentality wise, a bit like Kobe Mainu. On the biggest stage, he doesn't look pressured. He is very composed. In terms of mentality, it kind of fits in with like Lamans, fits in with Mainu. It's so for me, there's a lot of positives because he's incredibly comfortable at playing at a high level at his age. And there's the recent examples like I saw some scouting videos when dribbling past several players when he played against Monaco recently. And the biggest comparison people put is that saying that maybe similar to Rangers at Manchester City in terms of like touch and ability on the ball, but actually better in terms of defensive attributes. So defensive attributes are going to be his key at the moment. But in terms of like, you say he's not necessarily a flashy player, but he's someone that does have the ability to progress with sort of short bursts. And I think if you look at Koemenu in the last game, that sort of ability to go past players, a very reliable player that can link between different phases of possession. So, but he does have this mix of being a physical player, but is actually able to like show a bit of agility on the ball as well. So the thing that people like about him is going to be his control during transitions. Out of possession, he's one of the top players. And I think at the moment, Considering, I think he's ranked in the 65th percentile for interceptions at the moment, which this is the numbers from when he was a 17-year-old. So these numbers are going up. And the thing that maybe needs to work on is probably, I think, passing wise. If you want to compare passing, I think pass completion rate is, I think it's like nearly close to 90%. So passing accuracy incredibly high, something which is important as well, keeping possession. And his long range passing is actually not too bad. It's like 76%. So this shows that it's like passing is developing. So there's definitely attributes he's working on. And I think, but he's already got a base set of skills. So for me, if you're looking at players to develop, that if you watch him, then please put some information in there as well and let me know what you think about him. But if you're looking at this player, there isn't really, there's obviously things he needs to work on, but it's already coming at a level that's pretty high. And price wise, then when I read something probably in January, because this player was linked to us in January, and we talked about him at that point. I would say that the price that was being talked about in January was maybe about 40 million. It might be in euros, so it might have been 35 to 40 million. So I don't think it would have been really expensive. But Lille do want to make this one of their biggest ever sales, and which Manchester United, how much do we spend for Euro? I think that must have been like north of, it was like 55 million, was it? Something like that. There was like add-ons, so I'm not sure exactly what the complete fee was. But yeah, if you're looking at that situation, then Manchester United clearly they want to make sure they secure the best talent at a young age, and this is one of those players. And Mark says if they don't bring in three midfielders this summer, it will be a failure. So they need to address the midfield urgently. I think, of course, they are. I think they're addressing the midfield. That every single day there's pretty much a story about a midfield player. The fact we're talking about BOUADDI as another player, I think this might be difficult. But in terms of like where Manchester United stand with this transfer, it's been reported by multiple sources now that they're actually trying to ramp up efforts to meet with the entourage of BOUADDI. I don't know whether people feel that Paris Saint-Germain might be a likely destination. I'm not sure what BOUADDI wants to do at this point in time. That's probably something that he's got options. I guess he's going to look at what's going to be the best for his career. If he goes to Paris Saint-Germain, is he effectively just are they just stockpiling talent? They've got a lot of good players already. They're linked to Fernandez at West Ham as well. So Paris Saint-Germain are linked to quite a lot of younger midfielders. They've already got a top quality. They've already got four world class or very very good midfielders to choose from. So if Boadi and Fernandez went to Paris Saint-Germain, are they actually going to get in the team? And it might be the worst thing considering he's only 18. I think the main priority for Boadi should be try and play as many matches as possible, try and get in the wherever he goes. If he suddenly doesn't get much first team football, I think it could be quite a bad move. It might be lucrative, but you feel like he's got to get a decent amount of games as well. Mark says we can get Hackney for half the price. So, is this guy twice the player Hackney is? So, yeah, I suppose if you look at it, Hayden Hackney's had a very good season in the Championship, but a year ago, and how old is Hayden Hackney? Because I think Hayden Hackney is he like 22 or something like that. I don't know exactly how old he is, but I think we're talking about Boadi's like several years younger, and was already if you dropped Hayden Hackney against Real Madrid 3 years ago, would he have been the best player on the pitch? I think that's what we're talking about. So I think United consider him somewhat generational talent, and I've seen that being discussed on a lot of forums as well. That Boadi would be potentially world class in the future. I think the expectation for Hackney would be that Hayden Hackney would be a solid signing, a good option, a bit of a no-brainer. Would probably cost like £20 million more with a year's Premier League experience, but Boadi is considered potential generational talent. That's probably the difference. So these aren't necessarily my words. These are reports and scouting that's looking at Boadi, seeing where he fits in world football. And to consider at the moment, he's 18 years old. He's played now 57 games for Lille in the French league. Represented France at every age level so far, from under 16s up to under 21s, in which he's played, I think, 10 games in the under 21s since 2024. Look, obviously, with the French team, he's going to be pushing to break through to that team quite soon. In terms of like football, he's played like 93 games. I think it's that 90 games for Lille, so and a few games for Lille B. So a product of the youth academy. I think at the moment, if you're looking at youth academies around Europe, Lille have brought some top quality players through. and that's probably one reason why, again, he's quite highly rated. It's an academy that's been bringing forward top quality talents. I suppose the question is going to be that, like with Boadi, is he a player that's going to cost quite a lot of money at the moment? Like, how much would Paris Saint-Germain really be prepared to pay? So when you see people like Kvaratskhelia go for 59 million a couple of years ago, yeah, I think you have to look at the benchmark and say that I don't think he's going to go for sort of crazy money that people are looking at. So I'll just go through a few of the comments that, again, I would say if you can find some sort of videos on him, yeah, as JSN said, considering he's highly rated, he's going to be quite expensive. So I think this is one where Hayden Hackney, that maybe Hayden Hackney fits our kind of like midfield rebuild where you could go right. If we're gonna sign three people, then I think Hayden Hackney could certainly be one of those because he cost 30 million. And maybe a year ago, maybe in January, I think in January, 35, 40 million might have got the deal done for Boadi. So he's going to be a bit more expensive. The reason why people think he's going to cost even more might be because the interest from Paris Saint-Germain that's been talked about, and probably the fact that I think there's definitely a story which I've seen recently that it looks like Bayern Munich are linked with a lot of players in different leagues. I think German teams have stopped selling players to Bayern Munich. So if you're looking at them trying to get Wirtz and he went to Liverpool, you look at Paris Saint-Germain, sorry, Bayern Munich also looking at a few players United are looking at. I think Bayern Munich are actually having to go to different leagues to source players as well because German teams, I think, probably sensible decision not wanting to sell their best players to Bayern Munich. And we did see stories recently as well with French teams not particularly keen to sell their players to Paris Saint-Germain. So Paris Saint-Germain that are definitely on the radar of every French player, but we're starting to see that in certain leagues, teams do not want to sell their best players to the best team or the biggest team in that league. So it might be that Paris Saint-Germain want him, but it might be that Lille would prefer not to send to Paris Saint-Germain, which makes sense because it just makes Paris Saint-Germain even better. But again, a lot of this depends on where Boadi wants to play. And at the moment, I don't see any indication that pushes the information of him favouring one team or another. So I did say about 5 minutes ago, if I was Boadi, your priority's got to be play football. Like you're 18 years old, you probably want to make sure that your career develops fantastically. And I think that at the moment, that where he is perfect. Like where he is really good. So so Hackney isn't a defensive midfielder, says JSN. It says Boadi is. That's the difference. So Boadi is all round better than Hackney. Is he? How much is he worth? Like for people that watch Boadi, people that rate him, what's how much would you pay for him? Like where do you see his value? He's only 18, so the upside is that you've got a player that potentially improves loads over the next 5 years or more. So you've got a lot of progression to make in an 18-year-old. And there is very few players that are going to be world class at that age. So I think there's a lot of development to go. Yeah, Joe Nevers was definitely one that got away. You thought is this like Paris Saint-Germain? United's mid problem is lots of eights are available rather than a six, and so we definitely have an eight in Manus's culture spot. Do you think that's why Bawadi is maybe somewhat interesting to a lot of people as well? That you would have someone that potentially could do that job when Maynard goes a bit further forward. I think that's why maybe too many might be one of the bigger names on the list. Like too many is going to be definitely one of those players people look at and think that he could maybe do what Casemiro did. Like he could maybe cover some of the things we're missing, and that might be one of the factors as well. Mark says we need proven experienced players. Yeah, I think as I was saying to someone earlier in the stream, I think that Manchester United they need to get experienced players. Like say Tchouaméni's got the most experience I think that's available on the market if he did leave, and that would be a flagship signing. And I think Tonali as well at his age would have lots of experience. You could definitely say that people like Anderson, if you sign a player, the younger the player, the less experience they're going to have. But Anderson at the age he is, like a couple of years of Premier League experience at a high level, playing in Europa League this season as well, it would definitely be a good option. I think with this one, that in terms of experienced players, Boadi's played more. Like Boadi's been playing in the Champions League for a couple of seasons, with Lille. So Boadi does have top level European experience, something which say a lot of the players we're linked to don't have. Like we have players in the Premier League, Alex Scott, people talk about, Belieber's talked about, and Wharton's talked about, but Crystal Palace haven't been in the Champions League for a couple of years, certainly not beating Real Madrid. So I think if you're looking for experience, then Brody has experience, but again, there's only so much you're going to have. I think in a few years' time, we're talking about someone that's anchoring the French midfield, and its price could be astronomical. So that's kind of the ceiling you're looking at. But you have to take a little bit of a gamble. If Manchester United got too many, I think Yoro would. Sorry, I think not Yoro got distracted there. I think if United got too many, I think Buwadi would feel like one of the best signings you could buy that would be the next generation. So say actually to Tiger Claws. So maybe this would be a perfect list for you. If too many is probably the best CDM you can buy at the moment. If he does leave Madrid, so there's a lot of ifs about that one. He's probably the best option. And then if you want to like future proof your team, make sure you've got the next generation of talent. This is a bit like Manchester United getting Wayne Rooney in, getting Cristiano Ronaldo in. They weren't necessarily well. I think maybe Rooney was because of his performance, but Cristiano Ronaldo was an emerging talent, and it could be that sort of situation. I think what we're seeing here is United being a bit more proactive. So if you're going to be a bit more proactive and get in early, this is the same conversation as saying that if United sign the sort of players that Brighton or Brentford or Bournemouth sign, then you probably have to expect also that these players might need a couple of years before you see how good they are. So I think some of the players that sign for Brighton or Bournemouth or Brentford, we don't see how good they are the first season. Like Cody this season at Brentford can't stop scoring, but he was injured a lot last season. It's taken him a while to get to that level. So you've got to look at it and say, so Hackney's 23 years old. So Hayden Hackney is 5 years older than Boadi. That's the difference. And people, so that you're going to be getting potentially an extra 5 years. You're going to get potentially like 5 years of development for a player already considered one of the best at his age is going to be yeah, probably something special. If it only costs like an extra 20 million, I think it might be considered a gamble. I think you need to look at it and say, are Manchester United well set to actually give Boadi the development he needs, the coaching he needs, the environment to develop? Because that's probably going to be the biggest talking point here. If United do have those and do have that ability to do that, then I would go for Boadi every day. But it's going to be quite expensive, isn't it? You think we'll only get three? You think we'll only get two midfielders? If we only get two midfielders, Nagate leaves. It's going to be a big mistake, isn't it? That we're just not going to get a lot of options. So United pay for Euro 62 million euros, but it could go over 70 with add-ons. So yeah, that's the price that United paid for Euro. If you're looking at Euro again, he's got some very good attributes, but again, it's going to be like a work in progress, isn't it? So I think Euro is going to be someone that develops over time. It's a shame we didn't really go for a midfield player, sorry, a defensive player that was about 25 as well. I think we thought we got that in Delit. I think we thought we got like the mentor for some of the young defenders in Delit, but it's just the injury issues that maybe made that not work out. And Mark says you'd prefer to get Angela Stiller for that sort of price. I guess maybe it could be like, do you think £50 million gets the deal done for Buwadi? Because 50 million might be roughly the price for Stiller, although there's no official price for Stiller. It's that it's just been put that Stuttgart want at least 50. So there's more like a minimum price. So I think it's going to be a minimum price with that one. I'd imagine that how much do Paris Saint-Germain want to pay for this player? I don't know. I think the thing is that if you want to get potentially, if you see South American players that have been probably like, if you look at, I did a video maybe about a week ago now on Conceição in about to break into Palmeiras, and if you look at the Estevar deal that Chelsea did, you get South American players that are about to just kind of break into the team in South American club football, and they're costing maybe like 25, 35 million, that sort of price point. And we're not talking about somebody that might play for a team. We're talking about Boadi, who's actually played very, very high level football for about 2 seasons. So the fact he started really young, I think, is why the price is going to be crazy. So whatever the price is, add 20 million United tax. I think there's going to be. I think whatever happens, that we're going to see a bidding war, aren't we? Sebastian said it's going to cost a lot. Many big teams looking at him as well. I would just say if Manchester United look to buy a player, and we look around and we see Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich, and Arsenal at the table, I think that tells you what you need to know. Paris Saint-Germain are looking seriously at Boadi. They're looking very seriously at Fernandez at West Ham. Paris Saint-Germain have got an exceptional team and they've made very few errors in the team they put together. They've bought top quality players. I mean, and Bayern Munich are kind of like one of the best run clubs in Europe as well, with how they set up their team, how they scout the next generation of players. So I think it's going to be difficult. It's going to be expensive, but if you want to be the best team in the world, at some point you have to try and buy these players. That we can buy players that are ready now. Hackley's getting older by the second, Neil. So Hackley will be 24 in June, and the difference is going to be we're comparing a 24-year-old with an 18-year-old. Like I think Boadi's only just turned 18, so we're talking about 6 years difference, and people looking at it and going, actually, they could be similar. But with a couple of years development, Boadi could be world class. So the difference is going to be if Manchester United want to be the best team in the world in say 3 4 years time, we need to have some of the best players in the world. Like we used to have Rooney and Ronaldo, we need to have that sort of level player, and we didn't get Wayne Rooney by trying to buy the cheapest option. And we took a bit of a gamble on a teenager, spent quite big money at the time. Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't the finished product until a few years later as well. So you have to buy some players for that. Otherwise, yeah, if you try and buy players that are ready now, you're going to have to spend a lot of money, but also that team will then age at the same sort of rate. So you do need to kind of consider these. Just if anybody has any serious information about price, how much do you think they'd be costing? Jim says still and body for 100 million would be good, but I don't think we can put it off. And saying can Boadi do it in England on a rainy day though? Does he have the strength and minerals for the Premier League? I would say Malps. I know what you're saying about League One, but look at Turkey. People are saying could Turkey do it in the Premier League? I think when you're talking about League One, you need to look at that the league's actually quite physical. So I think it's a good league for transition to the Premier League. I think calling it a farmers league, then I think Paris Saint-Germain are clearly the best team by a distance most seasons, but there's top quality players in there. Like Cherki was the example. I think if you watch Boadi play, he's pretty physical, so he does have a game that would suit. I would say, but to look at this one as well. Yeah, we could get Agent Yoro on it, so we could get Yoro to have a conversation as well. But also, Baliba came through the Lille Academy as well, so potentially we're looking at this. So Buwadi 25, 26, 27 appearances, so 88% passing accuracy. So minutes played in the Europa League this season. I think it's Champions League the year before. Passing accuracy spot on. He's somebody he's very good at the basics as well. Um, Alex said we should take the scouts. Alex, you're a big fan of Boadi. What is it you like about him? That because I think people that don't watch him are. I remember talking about this 6 months ago, and people are just a bit skeptical if they don't see the players playing in the Premier League. So Boadi, he's worth around 40 to 50 million. I think also, what is a better said, approximate transfer value is maybe about 50 million euros. So we're looking at 40 million pounds ish, 40. So maybe well, I did think that when we talked about him in January, the price would be somewhat about. I think it was like Lille were holding out for maybe an offer close to 40 million in January. So maybe with more interest and the fact that we've got other teams like seriously interested does push the price up a little bit more. The only thing I was thinking as a factor is that some teams like Lille, I'm pretty sure they don't want to be selling players to Paris Saint-Germain and strengthening the biggest team in their league. So, and potentially they'd rather sell him out of the league, a bit like other teams do. And maybe that would make it a battle between. I suppose you're still looking at a serious battle with Bayern Munich. If I was if I was Boadi, Bayern Munich is a really good option as well. I think you'd find it probably easier in the Bundesliga as well. So maybe that would be a good league to get to develop nicely over the next couple of seasons. But I mean, I would like him to come to choose Manchester United if we're interested, and maybe that in terms of a perfect window, maybe you would have too many, and maybe Boadi would be that backup for him or long term replacement and then we could look at maybe who's going to play also in that midfield. I would rather go for if it was Boadi or too many. I think you've got to get too many. You've got the experience, you can walk into the first team. But if we're actually going to be buying, say, three midfielders, I would be looking at the next generation as well, thinking like Boadi could be that guy. Mark said if I'm Boadi, I'm off to the Bundesliga. I think if I'm Boadi, I'm mindful that you've got to be looking at how many games can you play? Like if you're an 18-year-old and you play every single game or as many games, because one of the things I did read as well is that he's actually doing quite well playing European games and French games as well. So he's actually playing a decent amount of football, and he can hold the he can manage the physical loads, which is a positive. And so yeah, so if I was going to say for like Bouaddi, I think going to Paris Saint-Germain might be a bad move at this stage because you're going to be competing with some world-class midfielders, and you're probably not going to get a lot of game time. You're probably essentially there to keep you there for the future and keep you as a backup. So I think that might not be the best for development. I think Bayern Munich probably is. Would Manchester United be a good option? Like, do people think he'd get enough games if he came to United? I say if we don't buy lots of midfielders, he might be in with a shout. I mean, there are a lot of spaces at the moment in the squad. I would say from a United point of view, maybe he should be a consideration depending on how the rest of the window goes. Like if we manage to land, so how would it be a bad move? I'm just saying he won't get games. If he wants to, he's an 18-year-old. If he wants to develop, then some players have gone to Man City and literally just not played. So that's I'm just saying that as a counter argument. The positives of Paris Saint-Germain are obvious, aren't they? The positives of going to Paris Saint-Germain, you play a lot of football, you're going to win trophies, and but the downside could be if you go to a team that's got Neves, Wittner, and they've got some world class midfielders, then you're going to be you could be very much a backup option, and you might not start many games. So I'm just thinking of the next 1 to 2 years, from an 18-year-old to 21 years old, the next 3 years, I think Boadi could develop loads. I don't know if Paris Saint-Germain would be the best team to do that. I think even Manchester United is probably, I don't know, you could probably make an argument for it if we didn't buy a lot of players. If we did actually, and if we bought too many, or something like that, I would be genuinely thinking you've got to consider your development and say Sesko. I think Sesko did it right. Like Sesko stayed at Leipzig for a certain amount of time, developed as a football player. Sesko could have joined the Premier League 1 or 2 years earlier. There was offers there, but Sesko said he wasn't ready. So if Buadi feels like he is ready to compete for first team football in a more physical league, maybe that's. You think he will get game time at PSG? He could be, he could be, but I'm just saying it's like a little bit of a gamble. I mean, if you can go to Paris Saint-Germain and get first team football and displace some of those names, I think that's like that clearly you rate him very highly as well. So you're thinking he would definitely go into that. No, Sasko just definitely did that. But Marks, you're saying he won't get regular games with us, but if he can force his way, yeah, my guess was going to be that Lille would not be keen on this one as well. So looking at this one, to put kind of a valuation on this as well, that Arsenal are the front runners according to a couple of sources that you've seen readers are better saying preparing a 45 million euro bid, or say okay 45 to 50 million euro bid. So we're looking at how much is that in pounds, like 35 to 40 million pounds roughly, or just over. Let's say Paris Saint-Germain serious contenders. So they're viewed as the most likely destination by French media. I guess that's going to be coming back to this story is that it looks like Lille's president's going to be. I don't think this is going to be an easy deal to do because they want to get the maximum possible price. So I think this might be a deal where if Arsenal put an offer in early, I don't think it's going to be accepted. I think they're going to want more money than the money that Arsenal offer. Like if Arsenal offer 50 million euros, I think considering how good Buwadi is and how much like, they sold Euro for, I think they want a club record. So if Euro went for more like 60, no, 60 to 70 million euros in total, I think this kind of sets the benchmark. And then I'd imagine Paris Saint-Germain would match that. Manchester United would probably have to look at our budget and see whether we're going to pay that much money. So yeah, I don't know. Arsenal are front runners, Stephanie. Yeah, it does lead to the obvious joke that will Arsenal be second place again? I don't know. So I don't know. I'd say Barcola and Dewey get first game time. Yeah, I'm not saying that he won't get first in football. I'm just saying that there's a lot of midfielders in front of him potentially. It would be quite difficult as well. But no, this is one where it's going to be quite difficult to guess. I think sometimes as well we saw a release clause for Turkey last season, and it ended up being that they weren't going to accept that release clause. So there is potentially different rules in some of the French contracts. It says Lille's leverage comes from contract extension signed just like last December, which tied the 18-year-old. I remember actually, I remember the first story I read about his contract situation was probably leading into the January transfer market, and it was very much that they wanted to extend the contract, whereas he was like talked about being a player they would reluctantly sell if he wouldn't extend the contract. So I think the price that in January might have been closest to like 40 million pounds or 40 million euros. So this is a player that potentially was a good deal to be done, but no, they put him on a longer contract. 2029 is another 3 years, isn't it? So that if you want to buy him at this stage, then clearly I think maybe like if you're looking like 50 to 60 million, that should be hopefully how much it costs based on that. I can't see like Paris Saint-Germain have got a lot of quality players that they haven't spent crazy amounts of money for. So yeah, so let's have a look at this story. But if Arsenal are front runners, then it very much depends on the director of football. It's a bit strange that Arsenal didn't go for Sesko and in the end decided to go for an older player in Gyökeres. So maybe they were thinking it's about getting players that are trying to win immediately. I think Boadi's obviously a quality player. I would suggest that because of Arsenal, if Arsenal don't win a trophy this season, it would be considered a bit of a disaster considering where they were. But I would say Arsenal probably need to buy maybe some players that are like maybe 25, 26 are going to come in instantly be like some of the best players in the team. I feel like Arsenal need more quality attacking wise. Like defensively, Arsenal are quite good. So I see this as a player that Man United could definitely use next season. I just don't see it as like should be priority for Arsenal. I mean, Paris Saint-Germain clearly they just want to strengthen everywhere. Yeah, the good thing is he would win trophies at Paris Saint-Germain. Now, so for people watching, Man United fans in particular as well, how much would you be in favour of this deal? So, should we do a poll in the chat just to gauge opinion? Are we assuming that Boadi's going to cost like 60 million, like 50 million plus? So, I'll put this in. Should He's going to cost a decent amount, isn't he? I'll put this in. I'll put this quite vague. Should United try and buy Boadi? If you think there's like other options that Man United should pursue, where it's like Fernandez, Alex Scott, or too many, all the players we talked about, if you feel like Manchester United shouldn't really, they should look elsewhere, then click no. But should United try and buy Bawadi? Should we put rough figure like 50 to 60? Is it something like that? We're thinking 50 to 60 million. We don't know for sure how much it's going to cost, but I think that's probably about a benchmark that there's probably that sort of figure. So I'll put that in there to the as a talking point. But again, I don't know to be honest. Nems says 100% he goes for 40 million. I'm just saying, like if you look at I think if you look at Arsenal as a team this season, they just haven't conceded loads of goals. Have they? They've been quite good defensively. Comparison. There's two teams that have been defensively better than every other team in the Premier League, and that is Arsenal and Man City at the moment. So that's probably a factor why they're top of the league. There is like another story which we could cover if people are interested that is about potential left back options. So just to throw this out there as well, while people are talking about whether we should sign Guardi, Manchester United have been looking at Juve as a potential target in the left back situation. and maybe that's another Luke Shaw replacement. There is also a bit of talk, and maybe this will end up being linked to like Rashford as well. But 22-year-old Balde, again, a player that was on the radar for a lot of people recently, and maybe like a year ago, 2 years ago, very pacey, attacking. But if looking at him as a left back option, potentially Manchester United might want a left back that's going to be, well, obviously a lot younger than Luke Shaw, and maybe this is going to be Luke Shaw's replacement. He's dropped down the pecking order apparently in Barcelona. He might be available for about 50 million euros, which 50. It sounds like kind of similar to Kadioglu price. So like Kadioglu, Balde, Diouf. There's a few options there that potentially could be quite good options, and that's something that I think United should be considering. Like if we do look at some cost-effective midfield signings, and if we can get three midfield players in, I think we're actually starting to see more and more stories now pushing out that we're going to be looking for we're going to be looking for trying to get a left back. So that could be a positive thing. I'd say Heaven and you say Mazraoui. I don't think Mazraoui would be a better centre back than maybe Heaven and Yoro could be like the Saliba and Gabriel. I think is what we're looking at. I'd say you were ecstatic when we signed Sesko and not Gyökeres. One of the best decisions this club made in a very long time. Yeah, Lammens over Emi Martinez for me is like a key one, isn't it? Like when we were linked to Emi Martinez and we saw what yeah, he's obviously had a long career, so we kind of know what to expect. But I think getting Lammens over Donnarumma or Emi Martinez was a very cost-effective deal and actually a better quality player recently. So, no, really good. And Wizard says definitely get this guy. So your top price would be 57 million. Back up to many would be lovely. This for me would make perfect. If this transfer window, for example, if we got too many for 70 million pounds, and then we got a backup that's going to cost maybe 50 million pounds, which could potentially be our CDM position sorted for the next decade at least, then that would be really good business. Then I think we could look then at a more progressive player, maybe a more attacking midfielder. What if we got someone like Belieber? You could have Belieber plus too many. I think there's definitely options like maybe we could reunite Belieber and I'm guessing they never played together, but they've come through the Lille. So yeah, I think there's like three midfield players there you could put together. That would probably cost what 70 for too many, 70 for Belieber, and then maybe that's 140. So then maybe like 50. I think for under 200 million, you could potentially buy three midfielders that make our midfield look extremely good. But for the next like 5 to 10 years. So there would be literally for me, I would not be concerned if that was our transfer strategy because I'd look at it and think the pieces make sense. You drop them into the team, like it's a good option, a good deal. I mean, if we that would then give us enough ability in the season now, like too many plus Mainu. We know those players. We know that they both had good seasons particularly mainly in the last few months, had a good season. And we know that Belieber and BOUADDI would also be players that improve over years as well. So that for me would be a balanced strategy. And I think if you want to sign young players and bring through potentially world class talent, then that transfer window would suit you as well. If you want ready made players that can drop into the team, I think that would suit as well because Belieber and BOUADDI can definitely play at a high level already in certain games, and too many would be perfect experience. So that surely would be a transfer window that I think most fans would get behind, and it might represent maybe one of the better balances they could look at. I would say we need a left back and right back. Well, I think that's what's happening as well. I think when you're looking at it, United are scouting these players and they're putting together a short list, but sometimes things happen where you have to take priority. And I think the thing that why Hawaii's been talked about last night and yesterday, say and that why Man United are ramping up efforts because it feels a bit like that. We've talked about Boadi for ages, but if Manchester United don't take action now, he's going to be off the table. So, Paris Saint-Germain are not going to mess about. It's the same as like when was the story last night we covered about potentially a bid going in to try and get Anderson. Whether that's actually happens or not, then sometimes in transfer window, do you remember Man United buying Euro and the way that Euro was kind of a quite aggressive battle? It's because you had to go for it at that point in time. If Manchester United had waited, Euro would have been a Real Madrid player. So there are some transfers where, like maybe Boadi, like potentially other signings as well, where you just have to go aggressive because there's a lot of demand. That's why the Belieber deal is a bit different. It feels a bit that you don't need to rush. There's not so much competition. It's an easier deal to do potentially, and I think that's why yeah, with Boadi, we'll probably find out quite quickly, don't we? Andy, yeah, if people have got some, this is one where if you've got some options you'd love to see, just post them in the comment section. If you want to have your say regarding who you think would be a good option, then let me know. So if we got Hackney and Gomez, say 70 million, that would be a better option for the club, says Andy. That would give you the that would give you the scope to certainly spread the money around the team a lot more, wouldn't it? You would be able to look at that and go, if Hackney and Gomez were bought, then clearly what I would say is that Hackney and Gomez could are Man United going for actually better quality players. Like there's no doubt that Hackney and Gomez are very good. Are Manchester United looking for potentially players that are going to cost a bit more because they're going to play to a higher level? So I do agree with you, Andy. I think Hackney and Gomez are really good players, but are Manchester United going for more expensive players? Well, I suppose if Carrick's in charge, could Carrick handle these new players coming to the club? I think so. I think when you're talking about Carrick handling players, I think Manchester United are buying players that have the right mentality to come in, and they're coming in for the right reasons. Like if Boadi comes to Manchester United, he's not coming to cause trouble. And I think if United are actually looking at potentially players that they want to sign, they have to have the right mentality and the right attributes. If they're going to be disruptive or they're not going to come in with the right mindset, I don't think they're going to be considered as candidates anyway. So I don't think it's going to be. I think Carrick's job is going to be to coach the best out of them and to set the team up as best he can. I don't think he's going to be dealing with disruptive players because Man United are going to be looking at professional players that come in and without the drama. Look at Lamans. Like how no head coach is going to have drama from Lamans, as far as I can see. And look at people like Cunha as well. These people are coming to win trophies at Man United to try and elevate the team. So I don't think it's going to be too bad. So I'm saying you trust Carrick far more handling our players than I ever did Amarin or some of the other managers we've linked with. Yeah, I would say regarding Nagelsmann, then apparently one journalist ruled out Nagelsmann. Then that was yesterday. So I think there was a couple of stories that came out about the head coach situation. One was that Areola is going to be the literally the only option apart from Michael Carrick. I don't know if this is true or not, but I think that's what they were saying. So if you're looking at Michael Carrick being in charge, I think that's the most likely. But there was a source saying that they're potentially Nagelsmann's ruled out. I don't know what the reason was, and at this point in time, I think there's a lot of speculation over head coach and manager, so it's quite difficult to see. So Dallow's supposed to be in his prime. I mean, Dallow's not been the worst player, but Man United have got other issues to fix, haven't they? I think the Dallow situation is one that will wait till next year. That if Manchester United need to replace a fullback, I think Luke Shaw is a bit more urgent. I mean, Dallow's available every single game. If you're looking at trying to attack, I think what United want to do is have one fullback that's going to be attacking. So maybe they're going to be looking at the left-sided player being more of the attacking fullback, and maybe the right is going to be more defensive. So I don't think Dallo is going to have the attacking output Man United require, and I don't know if he's going to. I don't think he's going to be sold though. That he might be linked to other clubs, but I don't think United are going to sell him because there's too much to do in the team. I think they're going to keep Dallo and they're going to look at other aspects. So I don't think it's something to be concerned about. And so you're saying that you decide your future. Well, I think if you're looking at Carrick's future, then that maybe we'll see what happens. Like once Manchester United have secured Champions League football, then the priority is probably going to be try and finish as high up the league as possible, and then see. I suppose we can see how he approaches the last few games. I think sometimes we've seen teams on the last day of the season. There was one team. I think there was one game where we played pretty much almost like a backup team against Wolves one day, last day of the season, and that was the one where Alanga scored. So it might be that after the Champions League, depends on what other teams do. It might be that it's just an option for other players to get games, give a rest for some players that are on international duty. So Say his missed passes crease. Well, is that your opinion, or is there some stats to back that up? I don't think there's been a drop. I don't think Dallow's got worse over the season. I think people are looking at Dallow a bit too negatively recently. That Manchester United have picked up more points than any other team since January, and Dallow's been in the team pretty much every game. So has Luke Shaw. They've been in the team every single game. So if we're going to give credit to our team for finishing third, then Dallow and Luke Shaw got to be getting some credit because they've been playing week in, week out. So if they play really badly, but no, one thing as well, I would say there was a league plotting how many teams, like every team in the Premier League, when you look at how many errors that have been made that lead to goals, Manchester United actually has got the fewest amount of errors, joint with Manchester City. So the fewest amount of errors leading to goals, Manchester United and Manchester City are the best in the league. So if we're looking at our defenders, then we're not making errors. So we can maybe criticise them for other things, but they're not error prone. They're not making mistakes. They will make the odd one, but we're actually the best in the league, joint best in the league in terms of like no errors leading to goals. So I think statistically that our defenders have done what they need to do. I think clearly we're looking at trying to upgrade other aspects of our team. If we get a much better midfield and we get more midfield balance, our defenders will naturally look better anyway because we won't have as much pressure on them. And most of the shots we conceded this season, we seem to have conceded a lot of goals from distance. So we're not blaming Lamans, we're not blaming our defenders. So maybe it's just a bit unlucky where people like Rogers scored, and I think that the guy that scored from Fulham. So these things do happen. So let's have a look at. I'll go through some of the comments and see. Stephanie says the problem with buying so-called superstars and expensive potential youngsters is you feel obliged to play them in a starting 11. So keeping the squad happy is a skill which needs to be looked into. That's something that's going to be definitely happening as well. It's going to be difficult ever, isn't it? Yeah, Dyer will stay 100%. And I think that some of the stories last night was potentially a bid put in by Man United, but we'll have to see if that's true. But also, I think the Nagelsmann stuff is something that's going to be every single day. There's going to be a Nagelsmann story about whether he's interested or not. Until Man United actually come out and say we're going to be, we're going to be having Carrick next year. We're going to see stories about it, and we're going to see people talking about it. So a bit about Boadi's mentality, saying coaches describe him as humble, responsive to instruction, avoids the flashy trappings of fame, and focusing on incremental improvement. So I've read something similar as well, saying that if you look at Boadi and what he's been doing, he's someone that is making. Like, he's only 18, so I just have to say he's only 18. So there's not going to be loads to agree on, but it seems to be that. Do you remember Cristiano Ronaldo at 18 when he came to Manchester United? He was working with the coaches, and the feedback we kind of found out years later was that Cristiano Ronaldo was trying to work on aspects of his game. The coaches were saying like, where do you see yourself? What do you want to work on? What what sort of things do where do you see, how do you want your career to evolve? And Cristiano Ronaldo pretty much did everything required to get to a certain level. And I think Wadi, he appreciates that he's not the finished product and he's receiving good tactical. I think one of the things is going to be that because we're all football fans, you kind of want to see Wadi do the best that he possibly can. And I think with United, it's so. Um, Marks, he doesn't though. He doesn't. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes that lead to goals. Like Man United don't make mistakes as a team. I think I will say this. I think Dallo sometimes shuts off and sometimes makes a mistake, but he's not making lots of mistakes. Like if you're scrutinising him as a attacking player, I don't think he makes lots of mistakes. But no, I'm kind of hoping that in terms of like Mainu, I think Boadi might have the right mentality as a fit for our team. So if we're looking at trying to remove, we've removed some egos from our team, but Boadi does seem to be a humble player, but does seem to have a lot of natural ability. So that's why I'm quite positive. And I did I found like a video a year ago, but I need to try and find another video to see if I can like post it. 'Cause if I could post it in the Discord, I would be. It says, your argument case for signing Bawadi is more compelling than Kieran's last night for Wharton. I think Wharton's a good player, but I think we kind of know what Wharton, like the level of the player Wharton is. I think Bawadi's a different player though. You're probably talking about a different skill set from Wharton. Like Wharton would be, in my opinion, less mobile on the pitch. I think you're going to get more mobility from someone like Bawadi. You're going to get more defensive attributes, but I would have to say that if you're looking at someone that can pass the ball and set up opportunities for attack, Wharton is a much better passer at this stage in his career. Like Wharton would be a much better passer of the ball than Boadi. You'd ideally have Wharton plus Boadi in your team. Boadi would be sitting deep in front of the defense, and you'd have Wharton further forward. So they're different players. It depends what you want. If you want to go buy an elite CDM, go and get too many. If you want to get one of the potentially best CDMs in football that in the next, let's say in 3 or 4 years' time, you go for Boadi. Adam Wharton would have a place in the team, but I think it would be further forward. So, but again, I don't think we're going to sign Wharton. I think he's on the list as well. Is Dallo 27? How old is Dallo? I just think with Dallo that he's not going to leave the club. He's this season, so there's not really much point in discussing whether he's going to be leaving the club. And maybe Dallo will probably have a less progressive role next season. He's probably going to be like more defensive, I guess. So it might be fine. If you want Dallo to put in loads of crosses, you're not going to see it, are you? And the target clauses, I don't think the club's savage enough to offload Dallas, Shaw, Mount, Litcher. It's a hard task, so it'll be done either when contracts run out or like a 1 year left on the deals. And so I agree with that one that if you go through some of those players, then I don't think Martinez is going to be even if someone comes in with an offer from Martinez, they're not considering him because at the moment they need the experience in the defence. So yeah, I don't think that Martinez will be sold, and I don't think Luke Shaw and Dallo will be sold this summer either. I think Man United are going to try and over maybe the next couple of years, bring in maybe a replacement. I think we're going to bring in a player that will eventually replace Luke Shaw this season, and then Luke Shaw will play some games. This other player will play some games. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that we do go for someone like Balde, who's going to be more attacking, but I don't mind if we go for Kadioglu because he can play left and right, and then we can look at that. So I think we're going to see that, Alex. I think we're going to see gradual replacement of those players next. That the first thing is going to be like Casemiro is gone. You probably have to look at the age of the players, don't you? Lindelof and Evans went. Casemiro went. We've got Ericsson went. So all the older players are moving out. We're probably going to see one more season from Maguire, then he will go. We're probably going to see maybe one more season from Lissandro Martinez, then he goes. One more season from Luke Shaw, then he will go. And then our team will look very different. So probably the next 2 years, I think, will be the rebuild. And it will be Luke Shaw's gone. I don't know about Dallo, yeah, but Luke Shaw's gone, Maguire's gone, Lissandro Martinez is gone, and we'll have a completely new midfield. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but you can't get rid of every single player in one window. Like we're already moving on Rashford and probably Agate, Xerxes, and Nana, and we don't want these players back. And I think also and Rasmus. So all these players are going to be moved on. I think the next window will be moving on probably Luke Shaw, Martinez, Maguire, and those sort of players. And then our team will actually be quite young. In about 18 months, our team might be quite young in terms of average age, and it's probably moving in the right direction. So that's another positive. I think with this one, when people talk about rebuild, I think that every team's like continually evolving, isn't it? So to say rebuild, I would just say maybe the best thing to say is a switch in policy. I think Ineos had a difference in policy where they'd sign players that are going to be 25, 26, but they would also sign loads of younger players. That's something we didn't really do before. We used to sign players that were going to be a bit past their best. So I think we're kind of adopting a more Manchester City style approach, aren't we? Where we try and get players, try and get them try and get them at the right age, get the peak career at Manchester United. If you're going to be building a team that's going to win trophies, it literally never stops. Alex Ferguson never stopped building, and I think the one thing we haven't done recently is we haven't looked for the future talents. We've always bought players that have already been good. So when people are saying we need to buy players that are good now, you do, but you also need to go for emerging talent. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to sustain things. Like if we bought Boadi a year ago, then it, we'd have got a very good deal. And it's the same with like anything that you have to start somewhere. People are talking about Aiden Heaven as a bargain. I think maybe at some point Dorgu might be considered a bargain. And at the moment, you could probably look at it and say there's potentially other players like Yoro is probably expensive. We might be talking about Yoro possibly in like a another year's time as being, or maybe a couple of years' time as being potentially a really good signing. But a 20-year-old centre back is going to just take a lot of time, isn't it? It's going to be like a slow development. So I've got a poll running in the chat that just should be uh, looking at now. So to look at the vote, like should Man United sign Bouaddi? I put the price of like 50 to 60 million. It looks like two-thirds people saying that we should sign him. So thanks people voting in that one. And if anyone's got some questions, I don't think I'm going to do a long stream today because I'm going to try and do a 1 p.m. stream. And then what we will be doing is there will be a stream tonight, and it's going to be a little bit earlier, hopefully, like maybe 7 to 8 p.m. And that will have a couple of guests on. There'll be myself. It might be a Liverpool preview, but we'll see. It might be transfer news. It depends on what people want to talk about. But no, the rebuild never stops. Like you never stop rebuilding. You never stop trying to improve your team. And I think we are having a fire sale. Agate, Xerxes, Anana, Bindier, Rashford, um, Rasmus Højlund. That's six players. That if you're going to sell six players in one window, that's probably about as good as you're going to get. They're players that should be first team. Would I swap Ben White over Dallo? No, I don't think so. I think that I don't see. I know people don't rate Dallo. I'm not going to be sat here saying I think Dallo is exceptional. I think Dallo is just he's not our biggest problem, is he? If I was going to list our biggest problems for the last year, Dallo wouldn't be on that list. But there'd be a lot of other issues. That if Manchester United have actually been making errors that lead to goals, there's an argument. But we're actually not making errors that lead to goals. And no, sometimes you look at Man United and Ahmed Diallo is not going to be as effective defensively as a player on the other side. We've got Cunha one side and Luke Shaw. We've got Dallo and Ahmed Diallo on the other side. I think sometimes our right's a bit weaker, but no, it's not the biggest problem, is it? But has anyone got any final points to discuss on Boadi? But if you've just tuned in at the end, then at the start we tried to give some background information. I think Boadi is a top quality player. I think he's definitely going to be a world class player in a few years' time. If Manchester United want to take the gamble and buy him, then great. If Man United buy a ready made player like too many, I think maybe even better at this point in time. I don't mind. I don't mind Man United. Like we're not going to sign every single player that's going to be a top quality prospect, but you have to be in the mix and consider it. If Manchester United do think that Buwadi's good enough to play in the Premier League at this stage of his career, then Turkey did it. Turkey went from being a player that's playing well in the French league to suddenly replicating that same form in the Premier League and has been one of Man City's best players. So if United think that Brdy's that advanced, and again, I'd probably say it's a judgment call, isn't it? Then maybe it's worth going for it. But so no, I'm just saying. I think United fans are a bit concerned about injury issues as much as anything. Right, guys, we'll be back at 1 p.m. Thank you for watching. Thanks for getting involved today. And if you're new, thank you for subscribing. And we will hopefully keep you up to date on any transfer news over the probably, well, as we get close to the window. Anything manager news as well, we'll be on top of that. But we'll also be looking forward to the Liverpool game. Obviously, that's a game we want to definitely win. And that's any sort of points in that game gives us Champions League football. So that's going to be a key match as well. But thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you at 1 p.m.